Hey y'all. Wanted to come on for a little chat. Um, it's Saturday. I have some laundry to do that I'm not as motivated to do. So I figure if I invite y'all to come talk with me while I'm doing this task, that maybe I get through it a little faster. So I wanted to take some time to kind of just give a little bit more about my journey with dealing with anxiety. For those who are watching for the first time or those who will rewatch, my name is Thais. And I am on a journey to come from underneath the rock of anxiety. Um, Before I get started, if you can please subscribe to my channel, if you can please like it. Yeah, now that we got that out the way, I'm gonna sort. So if I'm not looking, that's why. I'm trying to figure out what pile things should go in. But I cannot really tell you exactly when I started dealing with anxiety, but I am pretty sure that it became the most evident in my life once I had my kids. I remember becoming a lot more anxious when I had my first child, my daughter. So she's 9, she'd be 10 soon. But I definitely know once I had my second child, my son, who is 7, he'll be 8 in a few months. I definitely knew something was going on, and I am pretty sure that I had postpartum. I never went to the doctor and got like an official diagnosis or really got any help with it. But I am almost sure that I had postpartum. When I went to the doctor this past February, which kind of propelled me into this whole lifestyle change, and it's a new doctor to me. This was my first visit, so we were getting to know each other. So she's asking questions. They're having you do the questionnaire that kind of gives them information if you are dealing with any kind of anxiety or depression. And I noted about recognizing that especially with my son, that I was pretty confident that I had postpartum. So after we finished having our conversation about kind of just what I've been dealing with and things like that, she was pretty confident too that I had postpartum that I had never got treated for. And I think it kind of just grew out of that. So anxiety for me has looked like a lot of like nervousness. I can get like nervous a lot, way more like fearful about things, getting very agitated and overwhelmed very quickly, periods of just shutting completely down, not wanting to really be functional, or being functional very minimum, like the bare necessities of what needs to be done to take care of my kids, mostly in my house. Very often neglecting myself just because of not having the bandwidth to give much more than that. There has been times where I would just have these very intrusive thoughts. I would never say that I was suicidal, but I was very down, and I did feel like I may have been heading that direction. Like I will hit these I will hit these places in my like days and months where I would feel extremely low, like low to the point where it was like scary, where I knew that I needed to get a lifeline. Like I would finally like speak up and tell my husband, like even if I really couldn't communicate, I knew enough to know that something was wrong, and I was feeling scared even of myself almost. And that has kind of been my rhythm, like at least for the last 9 years. Like I say 10 years because I definitely started to feel anxiety even before I had my daughter. Just when being pregnant, just being afraid of all the things that could possibly go wrong when being pregnant. But it wasn't, I just thought it was just like natural anxiety, like, you know, just the anxiety and the fear that comes with the unknown. Like I didn't correlate it to like being a true problem, like something that I, you know, may need, you know, some intervention with, kind of thing. But in that, just also being a stay-at-home mom, I was, you know, I had a career. I was working prior to having my daughter. When my daughter was born, I stayed home with her for 5 months. And then I did go back to work. There was a lot of anxiety with that, like leaving her and going back to work. Also, the job that I had, the type of job that I had, required me to travel. And I did have anxiety with the idea of like being able to be required to travel at any given time. And one of the things that I was just really, really like lamenting, like praying and like begging God is like, I just want to be able to come home every night to put my child to bed. Like, I don't want to be out of the state. I don't want to travel. I'm not a big traveler. But this was just a part of the job. It wasn't something I cared to do and gave me a lot of anxiety before. Like, I wouldn't say a lot of anxiety, but it gave me some anxiety before I became pregnant and then became a mom. But that was like way more manageable. And it was just me, you know, so I wasn't married also then. So it was just me, and I, you know, I managed. Like, I would have a little bit of fear or anxiety about it. I would get to where I get, do what I need to do, come back home, and things were okay. But I knew that once I had, you know, became a mom, it was important to me to be present. Like, I wanted to be home with my child. So then the Lord allowed me to find another job. So I got another job, and that was local, and it didn't require any travel. And then, you know, not too long, like not even 2 years later, I got pregnant with my son. And when I was pregnant with my son, I knew that I was going to stop working. I was going to resign from my job and at minimum take a year off, to just be with my kids, because my mom at the time was watching my daughter, and I just knew that it would be very challenging for her to keep both of them. And I just was not with the idea of having my children in like a daycare or with a stranger. Like, at that point, my anxiety was definitely anxietying. That's not even a word, but like, it was already like too much that I could not have been functional at nobody's job. So I thought I would take a year off. And I have been home actually since I had my son. So I've been home for 7 years now. And that transition brought up a lot of anxiety. Anxiety that I didn't know what happened. Just, you know, the anxiety, some, you know, tied to finances, the anxiety, I guess not even realize, just not having regular interactions, I guess, like with adults outside of like my children. You know, that was a lot. Not really having a lot of outlets outside of my home because I didn't really go anywhere. Wasn't really, don't have many like friends locally and things like that. So I think that played a part, as well as to just my mental health overall. And then COVID hit, and that didn't help. And then in the midst of COVID, very early on in COVID, I ended up losing both of my grandmothers 5 days apart from each other. So one in April of 2020, and one in 5 days later in May of 2020. And that was very traumatizing. And that did not do well for my mental health at all. I was extremely close to my grandparents, my grandmothers specifically. And that was hard. It's still hard. I'm getting emotional, trying, not to cry even as I think about it. But that definitely was hard. My parental grandmother, I think, was even harder because being that I really didn't have like a lot of friends, or I didn't really have many, like almost no friends. My grandmother was the person that like I will call anytime, like being the baby, like we're running errands, and because I had so much anxiety with being outside with him because of just like worrying like what would happen if just the kind of people that's outside. We live in New York City. There's always a lot going on. So my grandmother was the person that I will always call, and I knew she would always answer, and we would just talk about everything and nothing all at the same time. So like her passing was like really traumatic. So that didn't really do well on my mental health. I remember when she first passed away, and I remember I think it was like the first time I like went outside, and I remember going to like open the door to leave the apartment complex thing, and this burst of like anxiety like choked me, because I was about to go do, it was almost like, what is it, what's the right word, when you do something in a habit, like you're not even paying attention. Somebody know it, the word, drop that in the chat for me. But I went to go do that, and then I realized that there was no one to call on the other end, because not only could I not call my grandmother, I didn't have anybody else to call, because like I said, I didn't really have any friends that I can call like that on a regular. So I just remember putting on some music because it was the only way that I can get to wherever I was trying to go. I don't remember if I was trying to go to the store or something, but I almost felt like completely paralyzed in the anxiety of it in that moment. And that lasted for like months. It slowly got better. Like now I'm able to leave the house without that, but for like, I would say a good month or two, I just would be overwhelmed with anxiety. And I think just moments like that, just being built on top of each other, it just became a lot. I had lost like significant amount of weight right before COVID. So let me back up a little bit. So I'm a stay-at-home mom. By the time COVID hits, my son was born in 2017. I'm a stay-at-home mom about 3 years, I guess. By then, like I said, just dealing with anxiety and my mental health, like this is not something that just came out of the blue. Like this was a real like battle. So I had like picked up a part-time job at the YMCA, not even really for the money. Like we definitely could use like some cushion, so it was good, but it was very close. It was something that I can get to. I didn't have to get on public transportation. That started to become an issue in regards to my anxiety. But it allowed me, the doctor I had, or one of my doctors, I have a few doctors and we can get into that another day to why that is, but one of my doctors had suggested that would be a good idea, just to kind of give me an outlet outside of just like being at home with my kids. Like I needed some interaction with like grown-ups pretty much. So I wound up working at the Y, and I had not lost the weight from when I was pregnant. So I had put on, I probably put on like 30 pounds in my pregnancies, but it didn't come off very easily, and I didn't really like exercise or anything. I never really been big into exercising, so I didn't have this great exercise healthy life before pregnancy. So when I had my kids, my body, though, just the like the shape of my body, like the way my weight sat, all of that like shifted dramatically. So I wasn't really pleased with what I looked like, so that didn't help. Wasn't really eating well because I just wasn't. And then I don't sleep very well, so I'm always tired and exhausted. But I didn't even realize until making this lifestyle change, like how just changing my eating habits, even though I'm still not getting sleep that well, I still feel different, I guess, because of what I'm putting in my body. So yeah, so fast forward, now we have, like I said, I started working at the YMCA. I am working there right before COVID, and I decided that I was going to do like a reset. And it was the first time that I actually like committed to exercise, and I was going to the gym once or twice a day. Still doing the treadmill. This is why I got a walking pad, because that was the only thing that really was working for me. I didn't like any of the other machines. I tried the elliptical, hated it. But the only thing that I could come in and do consistently was the treadmill, so I stayed to it. And then I started to do weights, and I liked that too. So I was doing that when I wasn't working at the Y. So I worked at the Y in the evenings, so I would go to the Y during the day when the kid, like after I dropped the kids off at school, to do exercise. And if I wasn't working in the evening, if at the time my mom was living with me, if she was able and willing to watch the kids for like a little bit, I would go to the gym. So I was going to the gym quite often, but it was for a short period of time because then COVID hit. But I had lost like 20 plus pounds, but very quickly I put it back on, and that had been very discouraging. Is one, how quickly I put it back on, but just even coming into this lifestyle change is like one of the biggest fears I have had is like wanting to be consistent. Like I truly want it to be a lifestyle change. So like even with how I'm picking things to eat and stuff like that, like I'm trying to make it natural. Like, you know how you can like cut down on stuff, and you're trying to do a list because you're trying to do even like a crash diet almost, where you're just trying to lose this weight, but then it's like that, eventually that dies out. You get tired of eating or doing whatever you're doing, and you kind of fall into old habits. Like, I don't want this to be that this time, but that's what happened last time. So I wind up putting all these weight. I also have my hormones during that time. Even I think, I don't really know now, but over the years I have dealt with like a lot of hormone issues, like coming out of like having my babies, nursing, all of this. Like my hormones was like everywhere, like they were all out of balance. So it just makes it even more challenging and more difficult and hard for me to lose weight. I also have a thyroid condition, which makes it extremely challenging to lose weight. So I'm on medication and been on medication for that for a while. Consistency is a struggle, even though I'm reshaping my mind around consistency. But when it comes to medicine, you need to take it every day. Like that kind of consistency is the thing that I've been struggling with. So like trying to be more consistent with that to kind of see if that helps with anything. But all of these things, just being a mom, motherhood has been hard. It has been beautiful. It is something that I love. There's nothing, I don't think I love anything more than my children and being a mom to them, like outside of God. Like I don't think there's anything I love as much as them. But motherhood has like, it has been hard, and that like process of baby and toddler and whatever comes next after that, like the process, like learning my kids and learning how to be a mom and them learning me, like that was a lot, and it was a lot on my mental health. And I didn't really realize that I always wanted to be a mom. I never considered like what motherhood actually looks like. I don't know if anybody's ever prepared, but I surely wasn't. So that played, you know, a lot on my mental health. But then after I gained the weight back, after losing it in 2020, I feel like things just got worse. Like, I think I started to overindulge even more. I love sweets. I love cakes and cookies and ice cream and those kind of things. And I bake. I'm not cake boss. I'm not out here baking cakes, you know, that we about to see on display anywhere. But I bake, and I love to bake, and I love to cook. So and I like to eat. So the combination of all of that was problematic, and I was putting on weight, and I was tired, and I was miserable. And even with all of that, it still wasn't enough to motivate me to do anything about it, because I was just so afraid of not finishing, like setting out to do something and not finishing it. I was afraid to fail, to be quite honest, and I just wasn't doing anything about it. But I remember I had hit a really low spot. I just remember, like I said, having those moments when I was like scared of me. Not suicidal. I never thought about like taking my life or anything like that. But I was just really low, you know, having those thoughts like, why am I here? Like, why does it matter? Like, and then just overwhelmed with emotion, like unable to control my emotions. And it was just not good. And I remember like breaking down on a call with my Bible study group one morning. But I knew I needed to say something, because that's how afraid I was. Like, I was afraid of me. And I knew I needed to do something. I was like, I don't know if this is hormonal. I don't know if this is like functional depression. I don't know if this is anxiety. I don't know what this is. But pretty much, y'all, like, I'm afraid. Like, I'm afraid. And I remember it was like in that space that, you know, somebody had brought up the idea of like medicine. And I had been kind of already entertaining the idea. I feel like the Lord had kind of like started to speak to me about that. Like, you know, I even actually, if I'm honest, I actually thought the Lord was leading me to be on medication. So after I got off that call, the first step in like finally saying, okay, I gotta at least like show up to this fight. Like, I'm laying down getting beat up by anxiety. I'm not even trying to fight. Like, I'm not even trying to do anything to fight. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to make an appointment to at least get me a doctor. I didn't have a primary care doctor. So when I said earlier that I have a few doctors, because I have hormone issues, I have an endocrinologist, I have my GYN, I have like specialty doctors, but I have had a hard time over the years and like my adult life. Like, I feel like since I came from under pediatric, like keeping a primary care doctor. So I neglected my health, forget my mental health. I neglected my overall health terribly. But it so happened that when my children go to the doctor, they were finally they're in newer practice, but I would always ask them, like, do you have anybody that sees adults? And they finally were bringing someone onto their team that's seen adults. I also, if you're following, you remember that I had shared that getting on public transportation had become a challenge over the last year or two. It's a real challenge, to the point where I knew it was bad when I started to rearrange my life to avoid it, which included going to a doctor. So where my children go, which I knew the Lord then was kind of like leading me, like there was time to do something about it. They have this service where they'll send a Lyft for you to there and from there, like a ride share kind of program thing. So I didn't have to use a subway. I didn't have to use a train. I can go ahead and do that. I don't have the excuse of, not having the funds to do it. Like, it was something that they covered. So I went ahead, I made an appointment, and I went ahead and went to the doctor, and that was my first step. So I was already in my mind starting to consider medicine. So when we got into that appointment, and we were going over my history, asking questions, things like that, and she asked if I ever consider it or am I open to it, I said I'm open to it, because I was at the time. I really was open to it. But then when we started talking, and she's, kind of telling me the things to look out for, telling me how she has some, she'll monitor me very close, telling me some of the side effects, and there's a whole bunch of them, which is the case with majority of medicines. There's all of these possible side effects. So she was just sharing with me, I guess, some of the top side effects that she had, that other patients of hers had expressed. One of them was about a period of time of becoming more anxious. And I'm like, ma'am, in my mind, you can count me out if I gotta be more anxious for a period of time. But she was just kind of saying, like, listen, it's one of those medicines, you just gotta stick in there with it. You may feel more anxious. It may not even be your experience, but it'll level out. Like, just, stay with it. Then she had noted about, like, weight gain. I'm like, in my mind, I'm already too big. I'm bigger than I've ever been, and I am not happy with it. I ignore it. I don't look at myself. I just go through life like it's not there, knowing full well it's there. But more weight gain, already dealing with a hormonal situation that already makes it hard to lose weight. So I'm like, in my head, but I'm not saying this to her, like, I'm not sure. Then she proceeds to say that in some instances, but she was saying she didn't think that would be my case, because they see it more in patients who are dealing, I guess, with more of a depression diagnosis versus an anxiety diagnosis, is like suicidal ideations. But I was just like, oh man, like this, she's not selling this at all, is what I'm really thinking in my heart. But I'm still not close to it, because she's emphasizing, like, if you're close to it, the medicine's not going to work. So, like, kind of like not even do it. And I'm like, then at that point, trying to still be open, because to be honest, I just was ready to feel better. I was ready to get from under this rock. Like, and if I had, hit the place where I needed to take medicine, then so be it. But I remember asking the question, what is my other option? And she was like, well, changing your diet, getting more exercise, incorporating more exercise, more movement. And at that particular moment, it felt like it was impossible. I'm not going to act like it didn't. It felt like doing that was impossible, because I'm already tired and exhausted and unmotivated and overwhelmed. Like, I felt like I needed something to even get me to a point where I can motivate myself again. So she wrote the prescription, she called the prescription, and I went as far as even had my husband go get the medication. Like, he got the medication, but something happened when he brought it home and he put it in my hand. I said, I can't do this. I said, I can't do this. And this is not to say anything bad about medication, because I think there are people who at times need medication, and maybe one day I will be too. But what I remember saying to myself is, Lord, I know I have not exhausted every method to try to get from under this thing. My eating habits, my relationship with food is terrible right now. I'm not moving. Like, the most movement I would get in most days is walking to my children's school, which is less than 3 blocks, there and back. I might get a little bit more movement if I'm there for PCA and I'm coming up and back and forth down the stairs, because I'm traveling between buildings, doing what I need to do for my role there. But that was not every day. That was majority of the time that wasn't the case. I was coming home and I was stationary beyond the things that I was doing in the house, laundry, preparing meals, like, again, minimum stuff, because I was just struggling to kind of be functional. That's even how I described to her. Like, I just don't feel functional. But I knew that I hadn't made I knew there were changes I need to make that I haven't made, and I just wanted to see what would happen. What would happen if I just exhaust every other thing? What if it looked like if I changed my diet? What would it look like if I become more, like if I have more movement in my life, I'm moving more, I'm getting more exercise? What would it look like if I really, really, really like grounded myself and just put my all into like my intimacy with God and allowing him to give me the strength to do this, as well as just him himself like pruning and uprooting this anxiety in me out of me. Like, what would that look like? And I know I wasn't doing any of those. I wasn't using any of those tools. So it was that day, which was February 18th, where I made the decision that I am going to try. And I knew that I had to make small changes. So I started with just saying, like, I'm going to be more intentional and conscious about what I'm going to eat. The doctor had went to see that on the 18th, the day before, had recommended downloaded my Fitness Pal, and it was just allowing me to get in. And she said, for the reason of not necessarily having to track all your calories, but give you an idea of like the calories that you're consuming. So I started to do that. I started to just put in there, and quickly was like, oh man, like it was like one meal that was like my whole calorie intake for what I was trying to do, because I'm like, if I'm gonna do this, I also want to do it to lose weight. So, you know, I put the numbers in there so it could kind of say how much my calories are for that day, what, you know, up to what amount I should consume that day in order to reach my goal. I set a very like low goal. Like, it wasn't like I'm trying to lose 5 pounds a week. It was like one or a half a pound a week. So I started there, putting that in there, getting an idea. I started to every day I would just make more conscious decisions when eating, cutting back on starches, portion size. I started with intermittent fasting, so setting a block of time, which was 8 a.m., excuse me, to 4 p.m. Only during that time I was going to eat. So I started with that. And then I remember sitting with my daughter, looking up exercises. We had done Grow with Joe before, but I really don't like workout routines. Like, I think she has amazing workout routines. I'm just not a workout girl. I don't like to work out, but I do like to walk. So that's why I wound up getting the walking pad treadmill thing, because I knew that was something that if I was going to commit to anything and do it on a regular basis, that was probably my best option. But I knew I needed to get moving, like some kind of way. So I didn't have the walking treadmill then. So I started doing that. My daughter wanting to do it with me was so helpful because I am an accountability kind of person. I do better. I'm more functional when I'm doing something with somebody. Accountability just, it leads me along paths. I'm able to stay the course a lot longer if I'm not doing it by myself. So that was helpful. So we started to do that in the mornings. Not every day, but we would do it when we could, like when we had extra time in the morning, when we weren't, you know, when we had a lot of times. There's times where we have a lot of time because my kids wake up really early, and so do I, because of just not sleeping, and they just wake up early. We generally would have a lot of time that they were fussing and fighting and meltdowns and all these things, that I was like, you know, we can just do this. Like they were helping me, because them wanting to do it made me show up to it. I couldn't really show up to it myself, but I could show up to it because of them. So yeah, we started to do that. I had told my husband, I said, I need to get this walking pad, like, because I knew that was next. Like, that was next. Like I said, I was taking these smaller steps. I started meal prepping. My kids are really funny eaters. My husband works a lot, so he doesn't eat here often. And like, even if he takes food, just because his job is just, he doesn't necessarily take a whole lot of food with him during the week. So cooking has been a challenge in our house, because I love to cook, but I overcook, so we were wasting a lot. So that wasn't also helping in regards to my picking of eating, because I didn't really feel like cooking for just myself. I didn't feel like keep throwing food in the trash because it cost too much money. So I would just eat foolishness because it was easy to make small amounts. But I started to like meal prep. So I was doing salads. The last 2 weeks I did mostly like salads. I had done a soup. And I would eat off of that. You know, if you've been following me, you see my English muffins and my eggs. I would do that. I love cheese. That was hard, but I slowly each day cut out cheese to the point where I don't have to have cheese in my eggs. It's manageable. It's still okay. I can still eat it and stomach it. It's not the worst thing in the world, because cheese is something that I had to cut, because on top of the anxiety, I've been dealing with high cholesterol for the last few years every time I go get an annual like checkup. And like when you're dealing with like a situation with your mental health, it just robs you of so much, and it doesn't even allow you sometimes to think clear. And just these small changes, it just became more and more clear to me, like I want to be here, like I want to be alive, I want to be here for a very long time. Like I want to be here to see my kids grow up and graduate, have children. I want to become a grandmother, maybe a great grandmother. Like I want to be around. So anything to do with cholesterol, the idea of like heart attacks or strokes, like those things make me very afraid. So, you know, having to cut out stuff like butters and oils. Not that I'm just sitting there drinking oil, but I love cakes and brownies and cookies, and it takes a lot of butter, a lot of oil. How do I know? Because I'm the one baking it. My husband's the one baking it. So I'm thinking about, like, I can see where all of this bad consumption could be, you know, contributing to this issue as well with my cholesterol. So even with that, like trying to finding different alternatives to, like, you know, desserts, because I wanted to do something where I can, like I said, sustain it. Like I don't want to just lose the weight. I don't want to just do this just so I can, you know, do some videos. Like I need a lifestyle change. I need to come from under this rock of anxiety. I need to come from under this rock of high cholesterol, and I need to stay from under it. So I started to, like, I think I went cold turkey in regards to like desserts for like the first week, kind of just to get used to it. And then I started buying like those Yasso bars, which are amazing. I had done them before, but I started buying those back, those Greek Yasso bars. And even just not over consuming them, just having one a day, like having like something to fill my sweet tooth. So I would do that. I'm not sure what's going on, so hold on. Hold the line, friend. I'll be right back. All right, friends, I'm back. My son had put a timer on and things was making noise, and I wasn't sure. So I'm back. Here we are. We back. Yeah, so I started doing the Yasso bars. I tried to make like my own little yogurt situation. Bought some Greek yogurt. So I started to make like these smaller changes. I found a lower fat cake recipe that was smaller, cut it into smaller slices. Committed myself to just one of that day, and like I would count that in what I was already eating. So these are how I kind of been making these smaller changes. And I've been feeling better. I have to say I've been feeling a lot better. The main issue still remains is sleep. Me and my doctor are fully convinced that if I can just get into a better sleep pattern, like if I can get more regular rest, that will make a world of a difference for me. But not having that piece of the puzzle kind of come into place yet, without that, I can honestly say just making these changes and adjustments in my diet and exercise, I am feeling so much better than I had been before February 18th when I went to that doctor's appointment. So yeah, that is a little bit or a lot of it of kind of my journey with anxiety. I mentioned I'm an accountability person, so I wanted to document the journey. I wanted to document it, and I'm glad that you guys are on this journey with me. If anyone has any like tips or any words of encouragement or any suggestions for workout clothes or you know, more healthy snacks and desserts, or some just delicious recipes that are like delicious but like more healthy, high protein, more vegetables, I ask that you would like write those down in the comment. Like, I don't know if you realize it or not, but like we're now on this journey together. So if you can write that down in the comments, that would be so helpful. But that's all for now. I plan on doing these kind of like these kind of videos. I want to kind of bring you guys up to speed, but I want to do like these progress videos in more detail to kind of like say what's working, what's not working, and just how life is. Like, I want to sit down and have these little chats. So thank you for staying with me. I have gotten my clothes sorted, so now I have to go and put them into the washing machine. So until next time.